Okay, today we're going to be painting this Dark Angels Primaris Captain in Phobos armour. Let's get into it. Okay, as you can see, I've already got the model Zenithal primed here, and I'm going to start by dry brushing quite heavily with some Uriel yellow. I just want to draw some highlights and focus onto the most prominent parts of the model right near the face, so I'm going to go around the chest and the power pack with a heavier yellow, and I'm going to lighten it up as I get further and further away from the focal point. Okay, now what I'm doing is I'm going to go back into some of those higher points with some titanium white ink by Liquitex, just because I want to have some really clear points of very bright highlights once I get my base coat over the top of this. Okay, so what I'm doing now is just using the airbrush, is I'm actually spraying over the entire model, or mostly just the areas where the armour is, with an equal mix of contrast medium and Caliban green. What this is going to do is it's going to allow me to see those undercolours just underneath the base colour, but give it a nice even coating. You can also do this with a brush, but this just helps me avoid any nasty copper staining. Okay, so now I'm using just a nice standard size brush with some Shabti Brown to colour in the cape and some other details that I want in this colour as well. Mostly pieces of parchment, purity seals and skulls. Just remember, as this is quite a thin paint, you may need a couple of thin coats, possibly 3, just to get a nice even covering. Okay, using some Black Legion contrast paint, I'm going to go in and paint some of the interior areas of the armour that aren't quite as hard as that outer shell. Most of the flexible parts around the elbows, torso and the back of the knees, if there are any. Now it's time to go crazy with some lead belcher. We're going to do all of the metallic areas. So the exhaust ports of the power pack, weapon, and the power cable there for the servo skull. Okay, coming back in now with some Shabti Bone, just to pick up some of the details that I may have missed off earlier, or just to cover up any mistakes when we're applying the lead belcher. Okay, Rhinox hide now. We're going to do the leather straps on the cloak, the belt, weapon holster, and anywhere else we see them. Trying to be nice and careful here, don't want to get in any more errors than I need to, don't want to cover up any areas that I've already painted, especially with the contrast paint, because it's going to be difficult to rematch that if I need to. small details now in XV88, mostly the sword handle and the handle for the weapon. I'm also using the XV88 here to put down some basic highlights on the leather, but I'm not working too carefully on these just yet. Okay, back now with some titanium white ink, and I'm going to do the screen from the servo skull. And I'm going to use the same titanium white to do the eyes on his helmet, and being super careful here not to make any mistakes with a very small brush, very gentle strokes. Okay, we're coming now, Retributor armor, nice, dark, vibrant gold color. We're going to do the chest eagle and any of the other details that should be golden. So there's on his right shoulder, we've got the laurels, and then we've got the little ornamental bullet hanging off his gun and his other accessories. Again, just being really careful here not to go over where I need to be, keep it nice and clean, saving myself adjustments for later. Back once again with the upper shaft bone, picking up the details that we missed last time, and again taking care of anything that we might have missed. I want a nice deep red, so we're going to use corn red. We're going to do some of the smaller details, mostly this little wire that I think is quite nifty on the servo skull. I'm also going to do the edges of his pauldron, and I'm going to cover his entire weapon in this dark red. Being careful here not to cover some of the metal parts that we want, so the scope, the barrel and the magazine. Then we get a nice contrast between those two colours and draw some attention up to this part of the model. Back again with your shafted bone, just can't get enough of it today. We're going to just cover this little tiny detail on the weapon. Again, just more contrast, lots of nice areas to draw your attention. Okay, Ball Red. Beautiful bright red contrast paint. We're going to use this to do the lens on the servo skull. We're also going to use it on the eyes of his helmet, just so we get a nice intense bright red glow in those areas. Frost Heart, lovely bright blue just for the screen of the servo skull. And we're coming in heavy with some null now. We're going to absolutely coat all of the areas that we painted in lead belcher, just so we get that nice lovely dirty feel that null gives every single metallic surface. Back with Retributor Armour, just to cover the eagle wing on this little sword scabbard. Now we're going to work into some of those recesses on the armour, but I'm going to be using Beeltang Green. A lot of people use Null here, but I feel that this Beeltang Green just gives an extra depth of colour that really helps that arm come to life. Now we're going to give all of our Ushabti bone areas a nice good wash with Seraphim Sepia, because it gives it a gentle yellowy colour, so there's a bit of depth to it, a little less flatness in the colour before we apply the wash that we're actually going to use for our shading. And this is where the real shadow comes in. We're going to be using Ryclone Flash in the deepest areas, mostly in the cloak, where we want the shadows to really fall heavily, or we want it to look a bit more worn or a bit more dirty. Obviously he's not going to have a super clean cloak after all those battles he's been in. Okay, well, I'll give those shades a little bit of time to dry. We're going to get some Warpstone glow, and just on the very, very tips, the very highest and sharpest points, all around where the head will be, we're going to just put some very thinned down Warpstone glow, just to give it a little bit of extra pop. Okay, with those shades dry, we're going to go back into the higher edges of the cloak and the higher edges of those Ushabti bone areas, and just bring back a nice clean bit of Ushabti bone, so we've got some highlights. We don't need too much, we don't want to go too bright white with this because it'll look a bit unnatural, so we're just cleaning up some of those areas, giving it a little bit more volume. Okay, so here I decided that his wrist needed a little bit more of something, so I added a little titanium ink onto the screen on his wrist, and then I'm going to go back over that with a little bit of Frost Heart Blue. Now to get onto that face, and I want it to look a little different. I don't want that standard fleshy, just pallid look. I'm going to give him a little bit more of a zing, just so he stands out against that green armour. So I'm going to paint the entire head in this beautiful bright magenta from Vallejo. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in with just nothing but water on my brush. I'm going to wash away some of that magenta from the higher points of his face, where he's not going to be quite so full of blood in those cheeky areas and the eye sockets and things all across his forehead. We're going to take away some of it, and then we're going to come back over that with a Ushabti bone. So I've come in a little closer so you can see. With the shanty bone just a little watered down with that magenta completely dry, I'm going over it, and what I'm going to do is in those areas where it needs it, we're going to see that magenta just coming through the shanty bone, so it gives him a sort of warmer feel, and that little bit of red against the red armour is going to make his head stand out just that little bit more. Quick touch of lead belcher just for his headgear. Now with the head attached, we're moving on to the base. I've already given it a coat of Rhinox hide, and I've touched up some of the details that I've added, just this extra little bit of rocket and an extra orc's head just for a bit of fun with some lead belcher. And I'm going to cover this rocket part with dirty down rust. Not really going to do too much to it because it's not too much detail, it just gives it a little bit of vibrance and a little bit of interest. Okay, some auric flesh just for that little severed orc's head in the corner. I don't need to be too worried about the details here. It's part of the base, and it's just added interest to it. Just some bog standard PVA glue. We're going to put this onto the entire base, anywhere that's left open with the Rhinox hide. I'm going to push it around with a fairly old brush, one that we don't really care about anymore. Okay, so what I've got here is a nice jar of sand that I got from the garden. It's dried out. Don't spend your money on these expensive fake sands, they don't look realistic. Sprinkle this all over the PVA glue while it's still wet. Don't be too worried about where it goes. Obviously the ground's not going to be tidy when we're in the middle of a war. Then we're taking some Mechanicus Standard Grey and an Administratum Grey. I'm going to get out some of the details on that stone that he seems to be stood on. Now all over the sand, once the PVA is completely dry, I'm just going to be going back and forth, dotting it with Rhinox hide, XV88 and Caliban green, just colours from the rest of the model that tie it all in nicely, but when they're all sort of blotched together, it'll give a nice earthy, patchy feel, like a torn up area of land. Last detail, just a little fake grass shrub in the corner there, near his foot. Draws your attention, but also sort of hides subtly that auric head. That way it's not the point of focus, it's just a nice added hidden detail. Almost there, we're going to edge the base in Black Legion. Nice and neat line. Good clean base. Initials, the year, just because it's nice to have a little memory of it. And there we are, all done. One Dark Angels Primaris Captain in Phobos armour, ready to lead your soldiers into battle. If you've enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, help me grow the channel, and we can make more videos.